I'm Anastasiya Lavrina, and welcome to Inside Politics, the program where we delve deep into the issues and developments shaping the global political landscape. Today, we explore a critical topic that has been gaining international attention: the growing strategic partnership between Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Georgia. This trilateral cooperation reshapes not just regional dynamics, but also the broader geopolitical picture in Eurasia. The three countries have been actively engaged in energy and transport projects that are not only boosting economic growth, but are also key to regional stability. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan recently described this collaboration as an extremely modern of cooperation, highlighting how these initiatives can serve as a blueprint for other nations in the region. We will discuss how this partnership impacts not only the countries involved, but also the broader region. But that's not all. The geopolitical landscape is further complicated by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. We see high-level talks between US and Russian officials focused on resolving the conflict. The talks have significant implications for the future of Eastern Europe and the world at large. We'll also be looking at the latest developments in the US-Russia dynamics. And speaking of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to the United States that marks another crucial moment in global diplomacy. The visit centers on securing critical minerals deals and strengthening Ukraine's relationship with both the United States and its European allies. Zelensky's visit will also have broader implications for US-European relations, particularly as they relate to energy security, trade and defense. Joining me today to discuss these pressing issues are distinguished guests. From Washington, D.C., we have Jason Epstein, an expert in international public policy with extensive experience in Eastern European geopolitics, and Glenn Howard, president and chairman of the Saratoga Foundation. And from Tbilisi today, we are joined by Dr. Vahdan Maisaya, the head of geopolitical research at the Georgian Strategic Analysis Center, who will provide valuable insights into Georgia's position within this evolving dynamics. Dear gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
So, Glenn, let's start with you. From your experience in the United States foreign policy, how do you assess the growing strategic partnership between Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Georgia? What are the long-term implications of this trilateral cooperation for the broader regional stability in the South Caucasus?
Well, I think Azerbaijan and Turkey are both the regional powers now in the South Caucasus, and so their influence is very extensive, and Georgia is the weakest link now in the stability of the South Caucasus with its ongoing protests. So you have Azerbaijan from one side and Turkey on the other, exerting their influence over Georgia, while you see a weaker Russia that has diminished its influence in the South Caucasus, with Armenia's turn towards the west. So basically, a lot of the eyes now are on Georgia and the situation there. But I would say the regional dynamics across all of the region are now being affected by the U.S. Mineral agreement now with Ukraine that's being signed today, and the ongoing U.S.-Russia negotiations, efforts to resolve the Ukraine war. And I would say for our Azerbaijani guests that the mineral agreement that Zelensky's here in Washington signing today is almost the equivalent of the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline agreement that was signed in the 1990s. The reason I say that is that the mineral agreement is a recognition by the United States that the strategic minerals or rare earth that exists in Ukraine is important to U.S. national security interests. And so this is kind of a watershed moment, I think, in terms of the United States expressing its interests in a key part of the world that's being affected by the ongoing fighting inside Ukraine between the Russians and the Ukrainians. And I think this is a recognition that although the United States has not indicated that it's going to provide a peacekeeping force, it will support peacekeeping operations by France and also by the United Kingdom, which is really, really important development. And of course, in recent days, President Erdogan told President Zelensky that he would be interested in sending Turkish peacekeepers to Ukraine to participate. So this was reported yesterday in the news, and so it's a very pivotal, important moment. So I'll stop there and basically say that the region is moving in this direction, but a lot of it revolves around Ukraine, U.S.-Russia relations, and the growing power of Azerbaijan and Georgia regionally, while Georgia is the very weakest link in the South Caucasus.
So let's listen to the opinion of our Georgian expert, Dr. Maisaya. Georgia has a unique role in the region, balancing relationships between NATO, the European Union and Russia. How does Georgia navigate these tensions, and what role does the trilateral partnership with Azerbaijan and Turkey play in this delicate balance?
Yes, unfortunately, I would like to just express a great thanks to having me on this most distinguished audience and with my colleagues. And unfortunately, I have to fully agree with my just about American colleagues that Georgia is like a weak point, and it's a true story because Georgia used to be a regional leader once upon a time, and also we also proposed about two very intensive, very interesting peace incentive about this. The first president, Welcome Sakurdia, second, Mr. Eduard Shevardnadze about peaceful Caucasus incentive, which also just made possible to more put main basics for today's about promotion of the South Caucasus geoeconomic, just about regional, just for security privileges. But nowadays, Georgia also been, it's like scratched into the so-called civil, into the information civil war. We have also just about great battle between the West from one side and second from the Russia, which also just made possible just Georgia just get to used to be like a weak point in that competition, just severe competition case between the West and Russia at one point. But second point, we also mentioned that, well, we have like a new dimension, so trilateral regional cooperation between the Turkey, Georgia and Azerbaijan. And I would like to mention that Georgia, Azerbaijan, we have like a strategic cooperation, not only about just post-Cold War period of time, but also have like a very historic just origination. I would like to mention that in 1919, when the Georgia and Azerbaijan at first time declared independence from the Tsarist Russia, they also created and set up a military political alliance, like just by the time as like a pre-mature just a NATO alliance, but on that spot, which also just successfully defended from the red and white Russia aggression into the regional affairs for a while, but it was a very good successful story. And now in 2013, the history also been remained thanks to the thanks to the Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev's very interesting incentive about to promote the Caucasian triangle just about incentive with military implications, where the Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey, they created so-called informal military political just about alliance to promote this strategic peace and stability in areas of the region and combating such most relevant asymmetric military threats and challenges as are terrorism, and of course providing military just about support to energy security. So nowadays I would like to mention that these triangle just about cooperation or strategic cooperation also been raised up to the level of the geoeconomic alliance, where Kazakhstan also become as a supplementary and most important actor. And of course, it also made possible that in ages of the South Caucasus, we have a very good case of geoeconomic cooperation, Middle Transit Corridor, which also promote and boost up economic prosperity, seasonal stability, and of course peace accord among involved parties.
Indeed, very interesting, and we'll definitely come back to the situation in the South Caucasus. But before that, Jason, turning to the conflict in Ukraine, how do you see the current US-Russia talks shaping the future of the war? Do you believe there is a room for de-escalation, or it's just a political maneuvering without real breakthroughs?
Well, thank you again for having us, Anastasia. There is progress and there is the possibility of a breakthrough. There has been much invective. You've heard President Trump describe President Zelensky in a very colorful way, and you've heard European leaders talk openly about potential rift with Europe. You've heard President Zelensky, of course, express alarm at some comments out of Washington. But what we need to do is look at what may be the final result. And these are all part of the negotiating process. What seems to be disruptive actually can pave the way for a peaceful resolution. There's just been way too much bloodshed. The Russian invasion was stopped, but now there's a stalemate. Hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost. The Ukrainian countryside, much of the Ukrainian countryside is a dystopian hellscape. And the ecological disaster is unbelievable. But now we have a chance to not only bring peace to the region, but also, even if Ukraine is not going to join NATO, for example, if that's going to be part of the price that Ukraine pays, there's sort of a de facto NATO presence that may take shape. We described President Erdogan open to peacekeeping. Prime Minister Starmer, who was just in Washington talking about peacekeeping. And that, in effect, brings NATO into Ukraine. It's not a formal agreement, of course, if this is what happens. But the fact that we're having these conversations on top of this mineral rights agreement that is being signed today in Washington is nothing short of remarkable. And that it's happened in barely a month of the Trump administration coming into office is similarly incredible.
Glenn, in your view, what should be the U.S. priorities in strengthening its relationship with Turkey, especially as it continues to balance its roles within NATO and its partnership with Russia?
Well, there's rumors that President Trump may travel to Turkey on a state visit abroad, and so the idea that the possibility that he may be going to Turkey is very important. But I think it's very clear that the United States is repositioning itself in Syria because of the emergence of a new government in Damascus. So the United States and President Trump is eager to get CENTCOM out of Syria and reduce the threat by the PKK to Turkey. And I think that's happening now with the overtures and discussions about Öcalan's call for the PKK to end its resistance. So the strategic dynamics of the region with Turkey are changing. And it's very encouraging to see that President Erdogan is talking about joining the French and the United Kingdom peacekeepers in a future operation in Ukraine. But I would say that the discussions I've seen in the last couple of days by President Trump, that the atmosphere about resolving the situation in Ukraine with a peace deal are rapidly changing. I think he said that yesterday that if peace does not happen soon, it won't happen at all. And I think there's an element of frustration by the Trump administration with the Russians not coming through on offers to stop the fighting. And I think Putin is interested in a grand bargain with the United States on NATO and Europe. And I was encouraged when President Trump several days ago said that he continues to support a U.S. military presence in Europe. He supports Article 5 and was asked this question specifically. So there's a lot of indications. I think that the U.S. position is toughening a little bit after an initial kind of gestures of goodwill on his part towards Russia. And the fact that yesterday the United States said it was going to continue sanctions against Russia for another year is an indication, too, that they're kind of toughening their position a little bit. And the agreement the meeting in Istanbul yesterday was not, I don't think it was very conclusive. So I think the atmosphere is changing a little bit in Washington. And of course, all this will affect Azerbaijan and the Caucasus in terms of how the United States looks at the region, because a lot depends on Ukraine and that situation and standing up to Russia. And that has a lot of people kind of watching how that will evolve. I don't know. I'm not as optimistic as I once was about U.S. relations with Russia, and I think that the Trump administration is being a little bit more realistic about it now. After the initial kind of euphoria about it, I think that's kind of changing.
Well, Dr. Maisaya, Georgia's strategic position between Europe and Asia is becoming increasingly important. How do you think Georgia can leverage this position to not only protect its sovereignty, but also strengthen regional ties and manage cooperation with the EU and United States?
Fortunately, Georgia in the stage of the biggest political turmoil, and it's impossible even just to more have just about navigated between the just about regional and global powers, just about new just policy provisions. And unfortunately, we are just in the age of the just about very stiff political standpoint, which nowadays increased time by time. I would like to mention that in Georgia, we have like a very severe informational civil war. It's the main indications how Georgia's stake been absolutely decreased in the international fora. But you are absolutely right. Geopolitical and geoeconomical Georgia still remains have like a vital just importance for those actors and from those powers. I would like to mention that Donald Trump's administration also expressed very sincere attention to the not only Georgia but the whole South Caucasus. Because why? Because they have just about very sensitive approach with what Afghanistan and Central Asia. So South Caucasus, Caspian Basin, the nice new administration need to promulgate and to provide its national interest to the Central Asia and Afghanistan. As you were aware, the Trump even mentioned that Afghanistan, just for his administration, is like just a bad memory, and he wanted to just overcome with this memory, and even just to more foster its policy implications towards Central Asia and to the Southeast Asia. And I guess the South Caucasus and Caspian Basin like a main gateway to get realized this policy maybe for nearest future, after as soon as the just about war ceasefire agreement would be just about emerge between the party in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. But anyway, I would like to mention that new reality we also have perceived, where the Turkey becomes like just about a regional hegemon, not only for South Caucasus but also even to the Central Asia directions. And we also have like a very new creation of a new military alliance, where with involvement Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Pakistan from one hand. And of course, we also see that even just Russia and Iran also have created its own military alliance. So this like a bipartisan just alliance, well, not a latent confrontation, will also be dominated in the future and will also have great impact on the South Caucasus regional security provision.
Jason, with Turkey's unique position as both a NATO ally and a country maintaining strong relations with Russia, how does this affect the ongoing situation around the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine? How do you assess the broader implications of Turkey's neutrality on the situation?
Well, it's a very good question. And recent years have shown that instead of this perception that Erdogan chases Putin around the room looking for attention, sometimes the opposite is really the case. When we look at how the Karabakh situation unfolded in 2020 and beyond, when we look, of course, at Libya, and naturally recent events, but also even events a few years ago in Syria. And Turkey is able to hold its own against Russian pressure, whether it's diplomatic, economic, or even military. And of course, the bilateral experience going back eons has been a mixture of, as someone from TRT World made a comment, someone there, I think it was Yusuf Erim, that you have cooperation, competition, and confrontation. And here we can see all three at play. And the fact that the second largest military, a modern military, second largest military in NATO, is willing to take on peacekeeping duties in Ukraine is very significant. The fact that Turkey has been an ally of Ukraine is similarly significant. And the hope is that here in Washington, that some of the foreign policy elite, not to mention folks inside the Trump administration and Congress, will begin to appreciate this. Because really, if we want any hope of stability, let alone prosperity, to return to the area around Ukraine and inside Ukraine, and we want problems to be solved, Turkey, whatever one's concerns may be on certain other issues, like, for example, the Middle East and Gaza, Israel, even perhaps how best to deal with the Iranian regime, that Turkey has to have a say in what takes place.
Well, and I will have one more round of questions for our experts. Please make your answer as short as possible. Glenn, looking ahead, how do you envision the role of the United States in the South Caucasus in the next months? Will there be a greater emphasis on cooperation with Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, or will the focus shift to managing Russian influence?
I think right now it's revolving around Russia and kind of engaging Russia, and from that, all the aspects of relations, diplomacy, geopolitics will evolve from that. And I just want to remind our viewers in Azerbaijan that President Trump views the world and views diplomacy and geopolitics through an economic prism. He looks at the European Union not as an ally, but as a trade enemy. And so because he is regulating all these things and adjusting, and some people call it a counter-revolution inside the United States because of all of his domestic reforms economically, that they are not really looking that much overseas. But I would say that the importance of the mineral agreement that Ukraine signed is going to change the way that the United States looks and has relations with the rest of the world. And in other words, it will look at Serbia through the lithium. It will look at Ukraine through its titanium, through its rare earths. And so it'll look at business relationships that it's trying to create with the rest of the world. So when you ask about Azerbaijan and the South Caucasus, it's important to note that's not high on the administration's priorities right now for Trump. And part of that is they only been on the job for 5 weeks. And so they don't have the staff, they don't have the personnel. They're working out their strategies right now. So we need to be patient and give this thing a chance with peace in Ukraine and the efforts to try to improve relations with Russia. But if that does not develop in the direction that we foresee, then things will change in our region. Maybe the war will continue. And so if the United States gives up on trying to engage in peace talks with the Russians, then we're going to see another change I think in U.S. policy and strategy. But I would like to say one thing. Geopolitically, if there is peace in the region and Turkey suspends Article 19 of the Montreux Convention, then that means Russian warships and NATO warships can return to the Black Sea, and that dramatically changes the geopolitics of the Black Sea again, because the region, the Black Sea, has been shut off to the Russians and to NATO. So the only countries in the region are basically with the navies are Turkey. So this is going to radically change the region. And if the United States has a mineral agreement in Ukraine, then that also changes the way it looks at relations with Azerbaijan, even Georgia, which has strategic minerals and has the Anaklia port. So this is, I think the economic priorities will return, but they just don't have time to have a strategy right now. And I don't think Georgia is really high on their priority list right now. So sorry, but that's not probably the news you want to hear, but that's the reality.
Dr. Maisay, can the trilateral cooperation with Azerbaijan and Turkey be a bridge to closer ties with the European Union, or there is a more complex balancing for Georgia at play?
No, I think so that it could be just a bridge between this cooperation of the East-West, just about transit corridor promotion from one point, because just about we have to also consider geoeconomic warfare doctrine, which should be just a new just about priority of engaged parties, global parties. I mean, from the United States from one point, China from the second point, and of course, in some cases, European Union also could be engaged in just about geoeconomic warfare, concept in this area. I would like to mention that Turkey and Azerbaijan and Georgia also cooperate, and they also just forwarded a new geoeconomic project to make just about energy security via energy delivery via just about Black Sea seabed. Just about this electric just about network connecting Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Romania and Hungary. And also just European Union also wants to invest in this project about more than about 2 or 3 billion euros. One point. Second point, also we also remained these energy security projects about Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum, which still also could be connected with about a South Stream project about get delivery Azerbaijani gas to the European market. And of course, we also have about the opportunity for Georgia to have like an Anaklia deep seaport, which about China investments, which also just promote the BRI incentive, which main idea is to make connections between the China and European Union's markets in getting into each other. Just about very strict cooperation net. And I think so just United States could also just express some interest toward regional just cooperation provisions, because I think so that Trump also promote energy security incentive at regional and global levels. I guess we will also just keep interest to the Azerbaijani hydrocarbon
after his that famous statement, drill baby drills. And Jason, my last question to you, as Ukraine's relationship with the United States are on its new phase, how do you see the future of global mineral supply chains evolving, especially with regards to critical minerals that are vital for energy transition and technological development?
Well, I think the cat's out of the bag right now. It's now apparent even to a layperson on foreign policy that this is an agenda item, and it's right at the top of the Trump administration's list. And if the Caucasus is not being seriously considered right now, perhaps a little patience is needed. As was said, this administration is 5 weeks old, and frankly, for the first 2 weeks or so, all we were talking about was Panama, Colombia, and Mexico, and maybe Venezuela. Ukraine and the war was no longer on the front page of the newspaper. Now it is. Now it's center stage. And at some point, the Caucasus will receive a fair amount of attention. And yes, whether it's Azerbaijan or Georgia, it should be ready to grab hold of any opportunity that presents itself. The Trump administration is very transactional, but is of course looking out for the U.S. national interest. It's plain to see, and so that time will come, and both Baku and Tbilisi should be ready.
Well, distinguished expert, thank you. Thank you so much for joining our talk today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And thank you, dear viewers, for watching Inside Politics. Do stay with A News and see you soon.